I've never used a microphone. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Kristen. Um, I think I'll just start so I'll calm down a little bit, and then I'll say have a little bit of something to say. A lot of I've met a lot of authors this weekend, and they frequently asked what it's like here when it's not the summer. So I'm going to start with a winter walk. Finally, I was alone at my desk, ready to write. Yet just a single nudge from a soft black muzzle, and I was in the mudroom, pulling on my jacket, fumbling for a hat, ready to go. After yesterday's rain and relentless gray, the world seemed washed to glistening. The need to step out, urgent. I watched myself get the dogs into the car, adjust the seat, turn on the ignition, amazed. How had I abandoned my work without any apparent struggle? Hadn't I fought hard for the privilege of sitting in that chair? Was it reading William Faulkner with my morning tea? In a single sentence of Pantaloon in Black, Faulkner said more about love and grief and time and race and humanity than seemed possible. No wonder my page remained blank. I didn't think I had a plan, but the car turned up island at the end of Lambert's Cove Road, veered southwest past alleys into Chilmark, and turned in at the Quansu Road. This was no longer the dusty, slow road of August, lined with the big cars of impatient beach key holders. Now the gate leaned open, gesturing a wide welcome for us winter folk. My tire tracks were the first since last night's rain swept the dirt clear. A twist, a turn, a bump or two, and then just sand, shrub, water, and sky, sky, sky. This dormant time is why I live here. This pause, when one season is behind and the preparations for the next have yet to begin. Now islanders can fully explore, not the unknown, but the familiar we forget to pay attention to. I park among puddles. The dogs pop out, tails up. There is the footbridge, the creek, and the sandy path slipping up and over the dune. Are there words to describe the sun on Black Point Pond? For a moment, I try to grab for the names of colors, tones, feelings, and then leave it to someone else. Faulkner would know. But for me, it is enough to stand here, saturated by its glory. The turbulent surf and huge winds surprise me as I crest the dune. The hills of sand had muffled the ocean's ferocity. The beach, like the road, is wiped clean by yesterday's weather. Ours are the first tracks belonging to human or dog. I pretend I'm Robinson Crusoe as I mosey along, picking up pieces of peat, a pair of crab claws, and a few white feathers. There's a swirl of shells dumped so exquisitely that I wonder, is there a better artist than the sea itself? By the time we turn back, pushed by sand and wind, I'm singing as loudly as I can, an old ballad about stalking the shore. Dear wind that blows the body free, Blow home my true love ship to me. Fill his sails. Too quickly, we're back in the parking lot where our car waits alone. The wet dogs climb in the back. My treasures go between the seats. And I'm ready for an egg salad sandwich and even the blank sheet of paper on my desk. And in terms of writing, I want to say something for anyone that's sitting here that thinks they'd like to try it, but they haven't started yet. Because I was a teacher and a children's librarian for 22 years. So I was always a reader. I started and maintained a children's library at a progressive elementary school outside of Boston for 10 years. And other than writing, keeping a journal and being a good letter writer, I didn't write. And writing happened when we moved to the island full time. And it happened one essay at a time. I had a teacher in 8th grade who said, anything that is important can be said in less than 150 words. And so it's hard for me to write anything much longer than that still. But I just want to encourage people that things can happen. One essay led to another, and after 4 or 5 years, there was a body of work that I wondered if it could form a book. I spoke to Jan Pogue, who I think is here, and she shocked me by saying she loved the essays. So together we collaborated, and probably I used the frame of 4 seasons because I'm a school teacher. And together with Jan, we pulled something together in a few months. And last to come was the title, Homebird. And I don't know if you can see it. The book itself is absolutely beautiful, which I had nothing to do with. That was the designer and the artist. I'm a poor speller, and I was looking up homebody, which I am, in the dictionary to find out if it was one word or 2. And I happened to pick up an English dictionary, which gave me as a synonym for homebody, homebird. And I thought, that describes me perfectly. And also the meaning did, because in the American dictionary, a homebody is described as someone who doesn't like to go out or leave home. But the English describe it differently. And they describe a home bird as someone who enjoys staying at home. And it's not that we don't like going out and traveling, but us home birds find special delight in the comfort, nourishment, and complexity of our lives at home. Through this weekend, a number of people, as I said, have said, what's it like here when it's not like this? So I thought I would choose some stories in the winter and in the fall when we go out, we're foraging, we're walking. There's more than meets the eye here. So this is an essay called Bay Scallops, with a beautiful picture. I don't know if you can see it. The artist is Anne Eldridge. In October, as soon as the family scallop season opens in Chilmark, my husband digs in the garage for his wooden culling board and the scallop drags I gave him one year for Christmas. He hoses off a pair of wire baskets, loads everything onto his truck, and we head for Menemsha Harbor, where he keeps his boat. We're going scalloping. Not much is grander than steaming up Menemsha Pond on a shiny August morning, cradling a hot cup of coffee from the gas dock. The sun dances off the water, and the weather is often still warm enough for just a t-shirt. Except for the fishermen competing in the annual striped bass and bluefish derby, most of the summer boats and crowds are gone, and there's a welcome sense of space. We move slowly up the pond until Whit chooses where he wants to set the scallop drags. Idling the boat, he throws first one and then the other drag into the shallow water. Every year, he forgets how heavy even the empty ones are. We motor slowly, letting the drags run gently along the bottom. Soon they are full. Together, we manage to pull up each drag and dump the contents onto the culling board. There are a few crabs, empty oyster shells, and some seaweed, but the bulk of the take is delectable bay scallops. My favorite way to eat a scallop is raw on the boat. Before we begin the job of culling, we stop and indulge in a few tender bites. Holding a scallop by its side, firmly but gently, I jimmy open the crenulated shell with a scallop knife and slide the guts off to expose the sweet muscle. A quick turn of the knife and a perfect bite is ready to be sucked out of the shell, sweet, cold, and utterly delicious. My second favorite way to eat bay scallops is the way my father cooked them. He added an ample chunk of butter to a cast iron skillet and put the pan on a stove over a high flame. Watching closely to make sure the butter was hot and bubbly, but not browning, he added the scallops. When I do it, I try to make sure no scallops are touching. I like them browned on the edges, but Dad didn't care about that. The procedure is simple, but there's skill involved. Too hot a skillet, and the butter burns. Not hot enough, and the scallops release their juices. Once the scallops were in the pan, Dad stirred them for a few minutes, keeping the heat pretty high. When he thought they were almost ready, he added a generous dollop of good sherry, enough so the scallops were swimming in a buttery sherry bath. To burn off some of the alcohol, he let this simmer a minute or so, and then the scallops were done. All that remained was to add a little salt and pepper to taste. Sometimes Dad poured the scallops onto a bed of rice, but usually he ladled them into shallow soup bowls, and we ate them with a spoon, sopping up the extra juices with a crispy slice of French bread. It's hard to imagine a better setting for eating a scallop than an open boat on Menemsha Pond. But Dad's den ran a close second. There was always a roaring fire. We'd settle in on overstuffed chairs, dogs at our feet, set our bowls on rickety TV tables, and dig in. The meal was so rich, the only thing we could do to settle our stomachs was follow it with a small bowl of ice cream. Recently, I learned that Dad's beloved uncle taught him this recipe. So it's funny to think that when Dad and I ate scallops together, we were connected in that moment, but what grounded our memories was separated by at least a generation. Still, I hope before the scallop season is over this year, I can teach my 2 children how to cook scallops the way Dad did. Thank you. Thank you. Another special winner. Can you hear me with the microphone? Okay. Another special, exciting winter thing is pond skating when it happens. When I got back this morning from a walk, there was a message waiting from my husband. Skating on Parsonage. Shallow and protected, Parsonage Pond in West Tisbury is one of the first to freeze. I grabbed my skates and drove over. Cars and trucks lined the road, and people of all ages were sitting by the fence, pulling on heavy socks and lacing up skates. 2 teenage boys were on the ice. Soon a young mother was pulling a sled with her bundled baby in it, and small children in new skates or boots leaned on milk crates to help find their footing. A few dogs managed to squeeze out of truck windows and added to the fun by barking, racing, and sliding around the edges. A tentative skater, I wobble and my ankles buckle. Even with extra socks, my skates are too big. I have a healthy fear of ice, but can't resist the romance of sliding on top of a frozen world. Besides, I love to watch my husband skate. Wit fully inhabits his body on skates, moving with grace and exuberance as he leans first one way and then the other. Watching him at Parsonage Pond today, I was reminded of the time he fell in here years ago, carrying our infant daughter. As he stood waist deep in the shallow water, he slid Lila across the ice to some young boys, who grabbed her by the parka hood and skated as fast as they could to where I waited on the shore, stunned. I returned to Parsonage Pond for a second skate in the afternoon. Hockey players appeared, and teams quickly formed up. In the waning light, the clacking of sticks and the sharp scratch of skate blades reverberated in the crisp air. Pleasure skaters arrived with hot chocolate and warm cookies, but the hockey players weren't tempted. No one wanted to stop, and they played into the dark, using headlights to illuminate the pond. We all knew this day of skating was a precious gift, maybe one of only 2 or 3 this winter. The forecast calls for continued cold, which is hopeful, but it may snow on Monday, when the moon will be full, the snow moon. The hope is that this will be one of those winters when the cold days string together, and even the bigger ponds freeze. And for a short, wondrous time, skating will become an everyday thing. When this happens, skates and sticks and socks are kept at the ready in trucks and cars. Lunch hours are stretched and afternoon hours shortened. The hockey players are always at it. The more ardent among them, like our son Sam, work hard to keep a good playing surface and can be spotted flooding Duart's Pond at night or scraping the surface of Uncle Seth's with shovels and brooms. Sam lives in Brooklyn now, but already he will have heard about the promise of pond hockey, and with luck, be able to come home for a few days to enjoy it. Most epic and rarest are those times when Squibnocket Pond freezes solid. We head up island no matter how windy and cold it is. Stories are shared of former winters, even as new memories are laid down in scratches across the ice. Skaters pour onto the pond, and ice boats, usually stored away, skim across its surface. The last time this happened, I joined a pod of skaters, and we tacked and beat our way towards Gay Head against the northwest wind until we couldn't go any further. Then we turned, spread out our arms, and let the wind blow us back. Tonight, I'm stiff in places I'd forgotten I even had, but I feel great. Bouncing over rough spots and sailing along on the wind offer a freedom and delight no indoor rink can simulate. Cold face, cold hands, and cold feet are well worth it when you can glide along under a flight of swans and hear the roar of the ocean surf just across the dunes. Alone, but with the welcome proximity of neighbors and friends skating nearby. Oh, thank you. So we talked about whether to keep reading or allow time for questions now. Are there any questions? Yeah. Okay.
I understand why you like to live here, but what made you move here? What did you anticipate about living here year round before you actually did so?
Um, I'd like to be able to say we were that thoughtful, um, but I think we had the opportunity to try a winter here. Um, I was ready for a change from where I'd been teaching. Our son had graduated from the school. It was a natural break, and we thought we were always pulled here. We lived in Cambridge, but I spent my teaching summers here. My husband had been a summer person here growing up, and the island had always had a big pull for us. And we thought, what if we just try living in one place? Um, and I haven't looked back. Um, although I have to admit, we did spend 2 years in Florence, Italy. So I wouldn't be honest if I said it was a straight shot. Yeah. Any other questions? John?
All the stories seem very necessary. I'm just wondering, did you write one? Do you remember which one you wrote first?
Um, thank you, because the first.
I'm not done, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. The first story I wrote isn't in this book.
Isn't in the book.
No.
And how many did you give to Jan?
When Jan and I got together, it started because I found I really liked writing and I wanted to get better. So I wanted to look for a mentor, and a mentor led to a writing group in Cambridge off island, and I'm now in school, which is really surprising. So I thought, as when I was a couple of winters ago when I started school, I thought I might not do this writing again because I wanted to learn how to write a longer piece. And for 5 years, I'd been researching the life of an Italian immigrant who worked for Isabella Stewart Gardner. But thanks to my eighth grade teacher, I couldn't write more than 800 words. So I think I gave Jan maybe 20, I don't, 5 or, and then when we organized it by the season, there were some empty spaces.
And so you wrote
So
other ones.
I
Oh,
feel I
okay,
did
right.
some writing. Anyone else? Okay. Ellie.
You had a lot of journals
Mhm.
that you go back to sometime and reread, and do they provide an impetus for new work? Or do you leave them on the shelf like I do?
Kind of a mixture.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I try to write 3 pages every morning before I get out of bed. And but often it's a way of clearing my mind because I'm kind of kvetching. So,
Okay.
or, thinking about something that happened the day before. So it's not necessarily related at all to, it's almost like taking a walk. It's a way of emptying myself.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe though, if you reread a couple, it might spark.
Well, that sounds great because then I wouldn't have to do some writing for a while, you know.
I'm not sure if you answered this, but what do you do about writer's block? Or when you get stuck and you just can't think of ideas?
I hear my father's voice saying, "You can do better than this." I flagellate and then I go for a walk and realize that reading is as important as writing. So during the times that I have absolutely nothing to say, which is fairly often, I will just read voraciously. What do you do?
I guess
Sorry.
I try a different medium, something that's just like playing. The other day, I'm a watercolorist, and the other day I started using those opaque watercolors. What's it called? Gouache, yeah, and just did a fun, colorful thing, and it got me over the hump.
Oh, good. Okay. So I thought I should return to summer because this is where we are. So this essay is called Evening Watch. Even on summer evenings, I don't often linger outside. I'll walk down to the beach and take a swim, but once I hang my wetsuit on the line and step into the kitchen, this room becomes the center of my concentration. I flick on the lights, turn up the radio, and start dinner. A child or guest may call me out onto the back porch to admire the sunset. But no matter how lovely it is, my attention remains with the meal on the stove. The ding of a timer or the scent of finely chopped basil tugs me back inside. So I usually miss the time when light slowly fades and so many animals become active. Not this evening. Tonight, I'm home alone, which you may have guessed is my favorite. I pour a glass of cold white wine drag a chair into the far corner of our porch, and sink into it. The cottage next door is empty of its usual summer tenants. No sing-song voices play hide and seek in the small yard. No screen doors bang. The grill is unlit. The porch light off. I noticed 3 catbirds hopping along the low stone wall between our house and theirs. The undiluted quiet is a gift. Fog blankets the dropping sun. This isn't one of those nights with wild reds and oranges swirling across the sky. The fading light is the dusty color of a blueberry. As the dusk slowly ebbs, I watch the color bleed and thicken to a deep plum against the umber of the newly mown field. A tawny smudge at the bottom of the field catches my eye. I wait. Out from behind a huckleberry bush steps a young doe. Her 4 legs are delicate and lanky, thin strips of gold against a puddle of the blue-gray light. She must sniff me, since she stops and looks my way, but she doesn't startle. Instead, she twists to rub her hind leg with her head, indulging in a long, thorough scratch before she continues along the path. I can't count the number of times I've watched my children and dogs meander down this same trail, heading for the beach. I anticipate where the doe will vanish behind 2 beetle bungs, and then move my eyes to the exact spot where she'll reappear. I track her journey until she disappears at the far end of the field, absorbed by a purple patch of oak. Just when I lose sight of the deer, 2 skunks saunter into view as if on cue. Separated solely by the low stone wall, these solitary animals seem oblivious of one another. What innate signal roused them from their burrows at the exact same moment? One patrols our yard, while the other commandeers the cottage field. They notice me. Both tails are up in warning, but otherwise they sniff the ground for grubs, fully absorbed with the business of dinner. Their black and white coats look glossy and thick. The white stripe glows iridescent in the advancing dark. I have an urge to run my hand through their fur, but it's short-lived. The skunk in our yard comes closer and closer to my perch on the porch. He's more at home than I'm comfortable with. I click my tongue to remind him I'm here. It works. He races across the lawn, slithers over the wall, and vanishes in a tangle of bittersweet and wild cherry. Stars pepper the sky. It's fully dark now, and the thought of my own dinner pulls me inside. Encircled by the yellow glow of our cozy kitchen, I try to picture all the other animal lives I run parallel to, but rarely intersect with. Who else do I routinely miss? Otters, owls, raccoons, moles, spiders. How many species use the path I think of as ours? Which animals are just now getting up and starting their day in the night? I'm grateful to be reminded of the extraordinary way living things fill each niche. It's too easy to forget how remarkably complex and rich our world is. From the kitchen window, I can just make out the shape of my bathing suit on the line. Tomorrow morning, when I put it on, I'll be following the deer's path to the beach and looking for signs of other travelers. Tomorrow evening, I hope to be back on the porch, watching and listening to the vibrant world that's always here. It's just a matter of paying attention. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.